This is Let's Talk Big, the Big Read with Jane Berger and Jen Hazel. The Owens Community College Campus Read is taking place now and throughout the semester, with the goal of bringing awareness of different perspectives through books. The Campus Read book is Carrie, a Memoir of Survival on Stolen Land, from 2020 recipient of the NEA Creative Writing Fellowship, Tony Jensen. It's a memoir and essays about gun violence, land, and Indigenous women's lives. Now sharing passages, topics, and events related to the book, Carrie, a Memoir of Survival on Stolen Land, is Owens Community College Director of Library Services, Jane Berger, and Professor of English, Jen Hazel.
We're here today with
Jane Berger
and
Erin Kramer.
And I'm Jen Hazel. And we're going to be talking about this amazingly awesome event that is going to be happening next week, March 6th, 12:30, College Hall 100, as well as a live stream. Erin, do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
I would love to, Jen. So it is a gun violence survivors discussion panel, and we are going to have some great guests here to talk about their experiences with gun violence, but also about how people can get involved. If people are worried about the gun violence in our community, there's ways to get involved. And there's a lot of things that we can do because sometimes we feel helpless. And there's a lot of things that just the regular person can do to get involved to make change.
Feeling helpless is one thing. Being complacent is something else. And we're going to take the helpless part out of it because we're going to be able to give them some suggestions and leads on where to go. And there's no reason for any of us to be complacent because there is a way we all can have a hand. And this is where It Takes a Village will really come to fruition of some good stuff.
We have some great speakers lined up to come and talk about their experiences. And we have 3 women who are going to be on campus who have lost their loved ones to gun violence. Those are very important stories. And these women are very courageous in being willing to share stories of loss. 2 of the women have lost their sons, and one of them has lost a daughter-in-law. They're coming here and they want to share their stories with our community.
What's really great about bringing it and having individuals with our community be here is, and this is not to minimize stuff we hear on the news, it's not to minimize what was in Tony's book, Carrie, but I think sometimes it's very different to know these people are living in our community and these things, many of them have happened in our community as well. Seeing someone face to face, hearing this.
Well, and I think we get used to hearing all of this in the news and it just becomes part of our day. Being reminded that this is real, this is affecting somebody. There are tears that are still being shed no matter how long ago this happened. There's a boy who is being missed by many people and others. We need to bring the faces back to this to make it real. And it could be any one of us. You used to say, oh, well, that doesn't happen where I am. You can't say that anymore. It will happen, and it has happened in all of the places that people might have thought previously was a quote-unquote safe place. There's no immunity. There's so much access to guns. And
even just threats in a sense of violence. When you were saying that, Jane, it made me think about my husband teaches an area high school. Well, both of you know that, but the audience doesn't necessarily know that. And when he started working there, it wasn't like there was threats of violence that, someone threatened to bring a gun, someone threatened to bring, and that it's not like we heard that. And probably in the last 3-5 years or so, we're seeing that. And now that my son is at school within the same district, it's scary to think about schools in our service district being like, there was a threat of violence, so on and so forth. It's really scary to think about because it was just, like you said, over here in the news, and now here it is.
Well, even a friend of mine who is a police officer in the village of White House, very small, somewhat rural, certainly everybody there thinks it is a very safe community, and it is. Many of these communities are safe until you realize that somebody's passing through or has been living there. The police officer was telling me the schools in White House are prime for something like that to happen, because many of them are a little bit removed from main roads or like a bigger city or town. They're a little bit more rural maybe. So it would be harder for responders to get there, take them a little bit longer. It would be easier for someone to get away. And I never looked at it that way. It really kind of shook me a little bit. I thought, oh my gosh, here you think this is a great, safe little area, but you need to know, you need to be prepared. And so he said that many of the principals offer ALICE training for their teachers so that they know how to respond should anything happen. And I thought, holy cow, I remember when we just had to learn how to go under our desks for a tornado warning. And that was the extent of our training, back in the day.
I was with you, Jane. You see it on the news and you think, oh, that can't happen to me. I got involved in a local group called Moms Demand Action. And, I was involved and I wanted to make change. But then it did happen to me. My son was abducted at gunpoint and robbed. So then it became much more real for me.
Yeah.
He was delivering a pizza in Toledo. That passion that I had to protect others, man, that knocked right on my door.
Yes.
And it made it much more real. Thankfully, my son is okay. But, I can't imagine. I sort of can a little bit because, you have those feelings like, oh my gosh. You get that phone call and what happened and how did that happen and what could we have done and what could we have done differently? And thankfully, he did everything right. He's still alive.
Yep.
And that person is now in jail. Thankfully, our legal system works sometimes.
Yeah, right.
Not always, but sometimes it does. And so in that case, it did. But yeah, so I try really hard to make sure people are aware of what's going on in our community. It can touch any of us at any time.
Yep.
And, what we can do to lobby our legislators and what kind of laws are out there that can protect us a little better. I'm trying to get involved and I'm trying to get other people involved as well.
I didn't ask you ahead of time about that story, and I'm glad that you shared that with us. Thank you. And I think that's a really good example. It doesn't happen until it does.
And then you wonder too, which this kind of goes back to our theme of last year, that was a horrifying situation for your son, who's a teenager. How has he been able to go forward? Does he have some fears of certain situations or places or things that might trigger a flashback to, oh my gosh, this is like where it happened, or this is just because he's okay doesn't mean it's done.
Well, and it's relative. He's okay. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
right.
Sometimes
Physically,
I'll
he's
say
fine.
physically, he's
Yeah.
okay. But even me, when I don't hear from him for he doesn't live with me. He's an adult now. And I will get super freaked out. And my mom will say, well, you kind of have PTSD because of what he's been through.
Right.
And that phone call that you received. And so we used to talk about survivors of gun violence. And I would talk about that. And I think now, I haven't been shot, but I am a survivor of gun violence because that's something that now I live with.
Yep.
And yes, talking about mental health from last year, and it was very prophetic, reading Stephanie's book, learning about counseling and how important it is not just to find a counselor, but to find a good one, because that's something that my son has really struggled with.
Yes.
Since all this happened, he's a 20-year-old boy. And so he's just like, forget it. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take a lot of time for him to find somebody that's really good and that can really help him.
Yeah,
So.
I hope he does. I really do. So he can go forward and he can not have any repercussions. And you'll probably, with all of your kids, it's probably never going to go away for you. And that anxiety, if they're 5-10 minutes, like, well, I thought they were going to call me at this time, it's probably never going to go away.
It is. It's really hard. And talking about it is so great. He was in a speech class last year and he did a speech about it. And I was like, wow, that is really something. So, that's important.
That works with the healing. Like he could have wrote about it. He could have, and that for him is going to help that healing. And maybe he's not ready to have dialogue necessarily with someone, but he is ready to start sharing it, because every time you share something, that leaves.
That's true.
And you have helped other people by doing it, but you've also, in reality, really helped yourself by saying, letting that out, letting it, exist. I wish we could talk with Erin more and longer about this. This event will be happening next week, Wednesday, March 6th. 12:30 in College Hall 100. And we have booked out 2 hours for this event. Even if you cannot make it at 12:30, but you can show up at 1:30, 2 o'clock. It is still worth taking the time to do. We will also be live streaming this event. You can check the website for that link.
Grab your lunch, come and have a seat. We'll have a few snacks in case you didn't get lunch, but by all means, make the best effort you can to come. It's important.
That's going to be it for us today. So on behalf of Jane Berger, Erin Kramer, and myself, Jen Hazel, keep talking big.
Catch Let's Talk Big on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio every Thursday at 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 7 p.m., and 10 p.m., and at various times throughout the week. Or listen anytime on the Owens Outcome Plus YouTube channel. Let's Talk Big on the Owens Outcome Plus YouTube channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and join us again here for Let's Talk Big, The Big Read with Jane Berger and Jen Hazel.